Howdy, y'all. I'm Zan Farley, he, they, also known as Lithish. I'm a professional game writer, here to talk today about my approach for writing for games, and other things, I guess. I have a degree in game design and production, and I've contributed to a non-zero amount of games in a freelance capacity, including Coral Island. So I have some credentials. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, but hey, this has all worked for me. If anything I say gets you to think about writing in a new way, I've done my duty. So, what does a game writer do exactly? Well, that depends on the needs of the project, the current milestone, the phase of the moon, the humidity forecast. It changes a lot. Some days, we'll be penning cutscene scripts and flavor text, like people probably imagine. Other days, we'll be writing dozens, if not hundreds, of arcs, or developing internal documentation so we don't drill ourselves a plot hole. I personally like doing all of that, even the internal documentation, but I'm what we in the industry call quirky. The big thing I do really well is less of a specific task and more of a broad stylistic, thematic, and logistical approach to how I write. It's a little thing I call character-driven world building. In layman's terms, good fake person make fake world go brrrr. Seriously though, I write compelling characters that are grounded in the world they inhabit, and presto, it makes the world more compelling too. So since that's what I'm good at, it's what I'll talk about. Let's get into it. I'm pretty good at finding inspiration for things. Generally. Sometimes I suck at it. But I've gathered up some tips over the years that should help get you started. Make an aesthetic board. I keep a collection of images that speak to me but aren't tied to a given character or story yet on Pinterest. When I need ideas, I make a new board and fill it with unsorted images that go well together. Browse new music. Open up your music player of choice and listen to tracks you haven't heard yet by artists you love. I don't do this often enough. New music, new ideas. Consume media. No, not that media. Go outside your comfort zone. Live a little. Use generators. There's gazillions of generators for basically everything on the internet. Google it. Of course, there'll be times when you're up against a wall and you need an idea yesterday. When those moments hit, you have to be ready to force it. Chase your muse. With a baseball bat. Just know that sometimes, your muse will chase you. And you'd best be ready with a pen. Or a notes app. Who writes stuff down on paper these days anyway? Establishing the tone of your piece is critical to guide the rest of what you're doing. I like to figure out an underlying message or theme for my projects and, if necessary, confirm it with peers or supervisors. When I'm working alone, I generally start with this message or theme before I even have characters or a setting. But I'm what we in the industry call quirky. Once you have the theme established, think about how the world reinforces it by either fulfilling it or opposing it in different ways. It helps me to split my world into 3 levels: historical, societal, and individual. The historical level shows how past events involving the theme have led the world to its current state. The societal level shows how the current social climate, especially those in power, apply the theme. And the individual level shows what the average person thinks and does regarding the theme. The key is to make it so they don't all match. So you'd want 2 oppositions and 1 fulfillment, or vice versa. Let's get an example. If your theme is conservation, maybe the ancient world existed in harmony with nature, but in modern times, the natural world is suffering at human hands. Nonetheless, individuals are each doing their part to save the planet, 1 step at a time. See how each element builds up onto the next one in contrasting layers? Like a delicious cake. Please don't eat the world building, though. No, stop, don't eat it! When you were a kid, would you organize the colorful goodies by the checkout lanes at stores? Are you the kind of person who color codes your to-do lists? Does the thought of buying someone else's planner stickers when you can just make your own make you want to roll your eyes? Just me? Okay, well, at the very least, I will enjoy this section. A note on documentation to start. Most game dev studios use either an internal solution or a Google Docs to track their world building, and the results tend to be pretty haphazard. But there's a better way. A more intuitive way. A way fans already use to store and track vast swaths of canon information. It's called a wiki. There are plenty of private wiki softwares that support collaboration, but my personal favorite is Legend Keeper. It's specifically designed for world building from the ground up, and while its primary audience is tabletop campaign runners, it works like a charm for game projects. I even use it like a GDD sometimes. What? No, I don't just love Legend Keeper because a quote of mine is on the front page. Look, my quote is on the front page because I love it. Anyway, Whatever system you use, make sure it's thorough and navigable, but be sure not to get carried away. Rabbit holing is fun, but it eats up time and energy like nobody's business. So if you don't need to know a detail, you don't need to waste hours trying to come up with it. Now, need to know is highly subjective, but I generally classify detail that way if it's referenced in the text, if it affects my characters' lives in visible ways, or if it underscores the story's message. Now, the iceberg analogy applies here. The audience won't even know half of this stuff, which is why you shouldn't get carried away. But be thorough, and if you mention a world-building detail somewhere in your text, write it in the wiki, or whatever documentation you're using. Generally speaking, when I join a team as a freelancer, the characters have already been made. I'm given a profile describing their personality and story role, and I have to develop their voice and story arc myself. The details and amount of freedom I have vary wildly from project to project, but this 3-step core method has worked for pretty much all of them. First, I use the profile to determine what the character wants. Beyond food, beyond shelter, even beyond rock and tatas. This is their deep want, the thing they'd do really silly stuff to get. With that in mind, I figure out what the character needs, aside from food, shelter, and rock and tatas. This is their core need, and they gotta handle it to get what they want, so it's generally some kind of ugly truth or trauma. Now comes the fun part. I figure out how to make them deal with the core need so I can reward them with the deep want. It really is that simple for me. Here's an example. Let's return to our world diagram and say I'm writing a world with a central theme of hope in dark times. Once, society was thriving, but things are darker now, and individuals plod on in spite of the cruel nature of their home. Historical fulfillment, societal opposition, individual fulfillment. So, if I'm asked to write a naive but kind farmer who wants to be an adventurer, maybe she wants to be an adventurer to make the world a better place. Kind of basic, but the deep want doesn't have to be especially unique. The core need should be distinctive though, so let's get creative. Perhaps she's had a sheltered life, difficult but straightforward. And to make a lasting impact on the world, she has to realize that she can't trust everyone. So she gets used by others and becomes a little more jaded. But then she's better fit to help people who really need it because of her experience. See how that reinforces the cruelty of the world and challenges the character, while keeping her core traits and the story's theme front and center? That's what you do. A few more tips that didn't fit neatly anywhere else. Mistakes make great stories, and desperate people are really silly. But characters learning from their mistakes is among the most satisfying gifts you can give to your audience. Also, at a certain point, even the most standoffish, cold characters should be emotionally vulnerable on screen. That humanizes them. And once it happens, make sure it changes them, even if just a little. Finally, the bottom line of all this is growth. Change is good. Growth is compelling. Dynamic, evolving characters make the world feel more multifaceted and authentic. Okay, I've spent the past, way too long introducing you to some of the tools and methods I use to write character-driven worlds for video games. A lot of this stuff applies across mediums, so have fun with it. And remember, take all of this with a heaping mound of salt. What works for me may not work for you, and that's fine. I'll just cry in a corner about it. Kidding, I'm kidding. Anyway, I hope you learned something new from this video, or at least enjoyed watching it. A huge thanks to Art by Form for putting on the Form Fair event, and to you for your time. Stay snazzy, and keep dreaming. See y'all around! Ba, habagada, gada gada bagada ga. There are plenty of private wiki softwares that support collaboration, but my personal favorite is Legend Keeper. It's specifically designed for First, I use the profile to determine